All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, hello. I'm not used to being big.
Look at that. How we doing? Welcome to the Mark Thompson Show, everybody. We're starting. See, here's the thing. We're ready to start on time. But I said everyone was so upset yesterday when we started on time that we're going to delay a little bit, which is what we've done. I'm Michael Schur. I'm in for Mark this week. Mark will be back next week. He sends his regards from wherever the hell he is. I told him things have been going pretty well. The audience is fantastic. The guests are great. And of course, Tim's spectacular. And Albert joins us today. So expect at some point that there will be references to the National Hockey League. Albert, I have a question for you. Do you think there's a way, if I can make this happen, that an NHL coach as a guest in the next 2 days would be of interest to the audience, or just you and me?
You're asking the wrong guy. I'm okaying all of this.
I am too, but I mean, are we doing that and boring the rest of America?
I think we should do it. That would be cool at the end of the show. I mean, it would broaden our audience, so might as well try.
Okay. Well, we will work on it. I will do that. I will speak to it. So there's plenty to discuss. If we ask the band to cool it a little bit now, we have. The great saga of Luigi Mangione that we're all following. America is fixated on this case. I get it, right? I mean, because not only is it, the young man of privilege flicking a switch and becoming an assassin, but it's also about what many people see as one of the great injustices in America, which is our healthcare system. But I think it's important to point out, whatever our sympathies are and whatever our sentiments are on the health to rest yesterday. There was a funeral, and he did have a wife and 2 kids. He had a family. He grew up in Iowa. He kind of worked his way up through the healthcare industry and became CEO of United Healthcare. And I don't know enough about the man, and I think we all kind of have different feelings about the healthcare industry in America. Actually, we may all have the same feelings about the healthcare industry in America. But the questions that we're all wrestling with are, was this the best way to bring that to people's attention through the barrel of a gun? And I think that there's a lot of discomfort with it, but it has certainly started, or I would say accelerated, a conversation about healthcare in America. And but he did leave behind a family, and there are people hurting, regardless of what you think about healthcare. Brian Thompson seems to me was a symptom of the problem, not the problem himself. He did not ride this all on his shoulders. And
I read that Senator Elizabeth Warren said you can only push people so far. Not that she's making excuses, but as a reason, looking at why people are reacting this way, why this even happened, that you can only squeeze us so far before we lose it, was what she's having to say.
Yeah, I get it. And listen, he is, what he did resonates with a lot of people. I don't know the numbers. We get in a bubble and we read comment sections and we hear this many people are saying this, and we don't know what those numbers are. We don't know if it's a groundswell or if it's some people that are being loud while everyone else is being quiet. I just don't know, and I'm not going to know it in the next couple of days either. None of us are, but clearly we're having conversations with people, with our friends and family and coworkers and the like, about healthcare in America now that we weren't having, before this happened. You see Luigi Mangione being taken into custody or being led into the police station there in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Yesterday, he had an outburst when he was being brought in, shouting at the press, talking about the injustices, and it's a really it's a complicated situation, but a compelling one as well. And now his lawyer, this guy's become kind of a folk hero on a minimal way for a little while. And I think that it's due to what he looks like and what his biography is. But I think also it's due to the fact that there are so many people that align at least with his belief before he pulled the trigger about the healthcare industry in America. And so what I want to do is talk about the fact that his lawyer, Mr. Thomas Dickey, is saying that, and I found this interesting, Kim, that people are calling into his law firm offering to pay his legal bills, that he has not spoken to any of them, and people at his firm have reported they've gotten emails and phone calls from people volunteering to pay for this guy's legal bills, which again speaks to what we were talking about. The sympathy with this man who did what he did is remarkable. I don't remember a precedent like this, certainly in a long time, but I can't remember a perfect match to this. I don't know if you can.
You mentioned his lawyer, who said yesterday that he hasn't seen any evidence that they have the right guy. Well, he had new evidence this morning saying that fingerprints found at the scene of the assassination of healthcare CEO Brian Thompson match Luigi Mangione. They say it's the first forensic match tying Mangione directly to the scene where Thompson was gunned down, that they have a match. Also, there's rumblings today about some type of claim of responsibility, some note where he takes responsibility for all of this. So it looks like perhaps there's more to this story, and it's still developing.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I think that that there was supposedly a manifesto. We don't know enough about it. Oh, look at that. I have to interrupt this because Francine P. giving $20 in the super chat for my Mark Thompson show mug, right? Oh. No one's giving me a Mark Thompson show mug. I've been doing this for forever, and I still don't have a mug. And finally, I thank you.
Get Francine. Nothing.
Yeah. Right. It's people sympathizing with me, just like they're sympathizing with Luigi Mangione. The injustices of the Mark Thompson show. Spencer Jaffe with $5. Thank you so much. We got more. $10 now. It's flying in for Nintendo 45. Hell, take your country back. 45 fostered this violence and be held liable. He'll get softer sentence. Bobby's murder. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we're in an era of, and we had Josh Koskoff on the other day, who's a lawyer. He's the attorney that's represented the Sandy Hook families and a lot of, he put Remington out of business, basically, his law firm did. And there's always been a sort of streak of vigilante justice in this country. And I guess that's what this is to agree. And I don't think, personally, right? All the ills and all the terrible things that the healthcare industry did. He was a guy, and I'm not calling him innocent of anything, but he was also a person, and this conversation should be had in many ways. And maybe this is what will drive us to that place. I'm still not comfortable saying that this should have been done because there are probably worse people out there, and I don't think that's how we do that. But in any case, it's just, we all have opinions on it. We're all entitled to them, and mine isn't correct or not. It's just how I feel. But in any case, well, let's talk a little bit about where we are now with this case. They're fighting the extradition to New York. So the governor of New York has to ask for that extradition from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania will grant it, I think what the problem with that is they have to show just cause, and then there's habeas corpus, which we heard a lawyer talk about. We heard David K. Johnston talk about yesterday in a different context. But all the legalese in here, it's going to take a little while for Mangione to be sent to New York, and New York is where he perpetrated this murder, and this murder is going to be tried there. What he's been arrested for in Pennsylvania are different charges: false identification, misrepresenting himself, things like that, the possession of a firearm. So those are serious crimes in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania can't go after him for the murder of Brian Thompson. And somebody asked why they're fighting the extradition. I mean, I think you take every legal avenue you can. They just got the case. It's a real way of delaying everything. They have 14 days to respond to the denial of extradition. So there's a process by which they have to go through. And I think it's, the irony here is they're delaying and denying and defending, which is exactly what the shooter said, and many people have said that the drug companies do. As a matter of fact, it's a good segue. So much of a folk hero is this Luigi Mangione that there are songs popping up all over the internet now and tributes to this guy. And also, is he a folk hero? There are folk songs. Some of them are not endorsing what he did, but they're saying what he did and explaining what he did. This one, it comes from someone, Albert, I think his name is Mispo. Is that right? MISPO?
Yeah, Mipso Music on
Mipso.
Instagram.
Okay, Mipso Music on Instagram. Let's play a little bit of Mipso, who's actually a fine musician and a touring musician, it would seem, but he came up with this pretty quickly. We get a good idea of
Wow.
I mean, listen, I'm always awed by people who write songs and can do it so quickly. And whether you like his voice or the song, I think somebody did not like the song, but somebody may have in our chat, which is normal. But it's pretty impressive to me anyway. And it really captures exactly what happened. And, he talks about this man walking down the street, a family man, but exactly what we're talking about, that they turn away from the sick and the lame, even though they're in the quote unquote healthcare business. And that is the debate we're having here. So as far as Mangione's concerned, there was a period of his life where he was in Hawaii in January of 2022 for about 4 or 5 months, maybe. And then he moved, he moved around a little bit, but this summer, everybody kind of lost touch with him. He seemed to have dropped out. Friends, someone who was supposed to be in their wedding, had agreed to be in their wedding, and then Luigi wasn't responding to them. Said messages like, I gotta know if you're going to make it to this wedding. What's going on with you? Nobody could reach him. And then finally this summer in San Francisco, his mother filed a missing persons report. And I should say that these are all tidbits of news that are coming in that, as a reporter, I wouldn't feel comfortable, reporting the way I'm discussing them here, if I didn't have it backed up and sourced and all of that. But I'm having the conversation that we're all having over things that we are hearing in the news. But I wouldn't represent any of them as absolute facts until we know more about the case. There are a lot of reporters working very hard at finding out more about this kid, about the Thompson family, about what moved the Mangiones, to look for him and why there was concern and what perpetrated. What made this happen? Was it his? There's speculation that his back pain was so excruciating for so long that he just snapped because of it. And so I think it's I think it's important that we give some time for these facts to come out. But so I'm using these as discussion items because they're kind of in the ether right now. And so his mother filed that missing persons report, and there was clearly a break that happened before the news that he made, and and I think that's important. And the fact that people are rallying behind him in a way is also the biggest part of this conversation, because we're not accustomed to that with crimes like this.
You played the music and mentioned him being kind of a folk hero, and I'll say that Amazon is now removing merchandise like T-shirts with the deny, depose, defend words on it. Which were reportedly written on the bullet casings at the scene, right? They're looking at taking all those things away, saying that, not okay to glorify a shooting. So they're pulling them. They had T-shirts, hoodies, mugs, caps, pint glasses, and other items with the deny, defend, depose words on them. They are available also on Etsy and other sites. No reports from Etsy and eBay as to whether they'll start pulling those items as well.
Yeah, it's and there are GoFundMe's that have been taken down that are trying to fund his legal defense. I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know why they're taking it down. It seems sort of censorshipy, but I guess there's a taste of it, and and the whole idea of the too soon part of it. But if not now, when? And I'm not endorsing it. I wouldn't buy any of that stuff, and I hate when people profiteer off of stuff like that. But that's capitalism, I guess. The fact that this somebody was asking about the extradition and why it's happening. Part of it is that it's a delay tactic that we talked about. But one of the other things that happens is that since there's no chance he's going to be let out anyway, why not let your legal team have the time rather than what happens immediately when he's extradited? And that's kind of he's denied bail, he's in custody, so that's part of the tactic, is what lawyers are saying about that. And so look, when you getting back to what you were just talking about, Kim, I think that the commerce that comes out of this stuff is always, people find it distasteful, and then they find it kitsch, and then they find it, whatever. I think these T-shirts will be sort of throwbacky in 10 years. Like, oh my God, that guy's got a Luigi Mangione deny defend T-shirt. But we also could be reading about Luigi Mangione in history books talking about when we started to change the way healthcare happens. So I think that there are a lot of outcomes. Not, we know what the outcome for Luigi is, but what his impact will be is yet to be determined. And then maybe it won't be as distasteful to sell things with his picture on it. Again, it's a really strange thing. And he's sometimes is going to be looked at as somebody who is sympathetic, it seems, for quite a while, both because of his condition and because of the person that he killed. Somebody asked about an assassination. I guess he wasn't assassinated; he was murdered. He was killed, because I think.
So she was asking, like, when does it transition from a murder to an assassination?
Well, I think an assassination is of an elected person or a person who is in charge of a governmental. Like, I think you can assassinate a king and a politician, but I don't think that person. I don't think when you kill somebody you can assassinate. I don't think it's assassinate. It's a prominent or I would say like well-known person in politics. Like you can kill your neighbor, but you can assassinate your senator, something like that. But
yeah, assassination, according to Merriam-Webster, murder by sudden or secret attack, often for political reasons, the act or an instance of assassinating someone, such as a prominent political leader, or the treacherous destruction of someone's reputation.
Yeah, I mean, you could do like verbal assassination. Yeah, but I think that, yeah, I don't know. Does this rise to that? Was this political? Maybe, right? I don't know.
I think it was. And seeing that he is the leader of a massive corporation, perhaps it fits. But I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess we can have that semantic debate. It could fit what an assassination is, and it was cold blooded. It was premeditated. It seems to have been, well orchestrated until it was done, and then it was a disaster for Mangione. But yeah, I guess that's what it falls under. Again, that's Luigi for today, and we want to just remind you that of a couple of things. We have the Mark Thompson Show Christmas show, which I'm sure Albert has a little image of. I feel like I haven't talked about it quite enough, but on the 21st of December at 5 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 Eastern, is the Mark Thompson Show holiday meetup. I will be there for a little while. Everyone else who is more exciting to see at a Christmas party than me will be there.
Yeah, you're going to be there. John Rothman will be there. We'll have
exactly all these people that are more interesting than I am will be at the Christmas party. But I'm not knocking. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just saying there'll be a lot of people who will be bringing merriment. It is $50. You can sign up at our PayPal with that donation to lock up your spot to that. You can go to the meetup. So note when you make that donation, note meetup there, and the RSVP is MTSM meetup or MTS meetup. Gmail.com. So go there and join us. We're going to be bringing John Rothman in a second. A couple of little funny things to talk about before so we can lighten the room before we get to politics. Is one of the things that we talked about the other day with Josh Koskoff, Kim, is that Alex Jones' empire was being purchased by the Onion, which we all thought was kind of clever and funny. Well, it turns out the Onion has been sliced. They're not going to be the ones to get. Is that right?
I don't understand why. I mean, I know Elon Musk is involved, so there's all kinds of political pressure, and now I guess support for Alex Jones. But when you read the story about the bankruptcy declaration and there not being enough transparency in this auction, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah, they were the judge who rejected that sale, and it was done in November. It was done last month, the middle of last month. They did it. The judge who rejected it said that the process and bidding process was not accurate and not fair. And what was interesting is with Musk buying it, if that's what is eventually going to happen, because everything seems to go Elon Musk's way. Josh Koskoff was saying it's not the person you want to have it, but there's the money, and the Sandy Hook families are the people that are going to get this money, and they're going to get a whole lot more from, and Elon Musk will be a whole lot more exposed if he's the one who ends up with InfoWars. So it might be good for InfoWars, but it'll be good for who his clients are as well, which I thought was kind of interesting. But man, the irony of the Onion buying InfoWars would have been spectacular.
Totally. They wanted to turn it into a big satire site. It would have been great.
Right. Yeah. And then
I want to know this though about the Onion. I want to know, does the bankruptcy proceedings, does the selling off of the site and most of his assets, does it leave him in tatters with nothing left, Alex Jones? Because that's how I want it to go. Like, I want him to be in poverty.
I'm going to be not an expert here, but I know Texas has a homestead law, so that no matter what happens to you within bankruptcy, when you declare bankruptcy, they can not come for your home, nor can they come for one car per person residing in your home. So if he has a wife and a kid, I don't know that he does, that means they can have 3 cars and their home cannot be taken. And money supporting that home, it cannot be touched either. Yes, I mean, his whole life and world will change drastically and has changed drastically, and he's crying poverty. But it doesn't mean he's not going to be forced to sell the things that are in that house. But there is some protection that Texas gives that other states don't on bankruptcy. But I things are not going well for him, I would say.
I wouldn't usually wish ill will on someone, but he's so despicable.
Yeah, he's somebody who's for whom will is more easily wished. than on others. I mean, he's brought so much, he's brought so much harm and ill will onto people who didn't deserve it. The Sandy Hook families denying that the shooting took place. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine burying a child and having somebody tell you that it didn't happen and you're making it up? So I think it's pretty just that this has happened, and I think we'll watch who gets it and what that will mean. It could mean, as Koskov said, it could mean that there is a good amount of money, a lot more money that will go to his clients, the families of Sandy Hook that were wronged by Alex Jones, and that, I guess, would make everybody happier anyway. Yeah. There is that. I think we should go to John Rothman now, because I wish to talk about that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So he has probably forgotten more about politics than most people have ever known, even though that's been said of me. Kim, I'm going to ask you to tell me about John Rothman's podcast and the daily political podcast he does, because he told me in the pregame show. Tell me what it's called again.
So John Rothman has a daily podcast. It is called Around the Political World with John Rothman. And he does this, the most important topics of the day. He does this every day. I think it's 5 or 10 minutes. And it's always good. And he is a former KGO talk show host. He is a presidential historian. And he is now a political analyst on this show. It's John Rothman, everyone.
Yeah, I'm 2 out of those 3 things, John. Hey, John, how are you?
Very well. Delighted to be with you, Michael.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I've been telling guests all week.
By the way, let me weigh in. When somebody shoots somebody in the back because of a political issue, and healthcare is a political issue, I would call it an assassination.
I wouldn't argue with you. Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you. I mean, that's why
I thought I'd weigh in.
No, I'm always weigh in. I just wasn't sure if the prominence of, a CEO of a healthcare company, rises to the level of, James Garfield. But I do.
You'll have to remind everybody who James Garfield is.
He was the guy. Yeah, right. He was the guy that was shot by Charles Guiteau. I mean, isn't that
very good? I'm very impressed.
But Garfield was a president who was shot. I believe he was the 20th president of the United States. And he was shot by, he was one of our 4 assassinated presidents. So I just wasn't sure, Sadat was assassinated. There was an assassination attempt on the Pope. Of course, Franz Ferdinand assassinated to start the First World War. Are they the same as the CEO of United Healthcare? Yeah.
I would suggest yes. Yeah. He was assassinated because of his position with a healthcare company. There was a political intent and a message. And by the way, anybody who celebrates somebody who shoots somebody in the back with malice and intent has no sympathy from me at all. The fact that he has become, to a degree, a hero to some is absolutely disgusting. Of course, you remember when Lee Harvey Oswald was viewed as something of a hero. It just depends on who you're talking to. But
right. And so we talked about, so was John Wilkes Booth by many, right? I mean, so there is, again, they shot U.S. presidents. I would argue it's a little bit different. And I understand why it's, and it's also why I said in the lead into this, or, when we were talking about Mangione 4, that nobody's opinion is really sort of, you can take issue with why they would have that opinion. But I also understand people who, have gone bankrupt because of the healthcare companies, have seen relatives pass, or people know secondhand wave, because insurance doesn't cover, in this country, the richest country in the world, right? I see.
I would not defend the healthcare system, but I would remind you that a talk show host, Berg, was assassinated in Denver for his political views. And I would suggest to you, I had a death threat against me, and immediately the district attorney of San Francisco and the police department sprang to it for fear that there would be an attempt on my life. So is that an assassination? You bet. So, it's splitting hairs, but it was murder, most foul.
Oh, and that's what I call it. That's what I call it each time. He murdered this man. And, I guess in most murders, we don't see a silver lining. And I would say it's a sort of tarnished silver lining. But if there is something to be taken from this, is that many people are now talking about the ills of the healthcare system in this country.
May I respectfully point out that we talked about it in the campaign, that Donald Trump is talking about replacing Obamacare. He originally said he had a plan. Then he revised it and said, well, we have ideas. And let me tell you, when you step forward as a public figure on these issues, but whatever you want to call it, there is no excuse for it. And I think that's the key. And anybody who celebrates, I had somebody when the first assassination attempt against Donald Trump took place, people who actually emailed me to celebrate it. And I said, are you nuts? That's not the way the American system works, and that's not the kind of world we want to live in.
Yeah, you won't find disagreement here. But I will say that while we were talking about it during the campaign, the only thing that I guess I differ with you on is, while we were talking about it during the campaign, there is an urgent and like not everybody paid attention to that campaign. Not everybody, people, a lot of, as you know from covering this for as long as you have, a lot of political speak goes over people's head. I mean, we're looking at it and we're reading it. When something like this happens, this tragedy happens, it does bring attention to an issue that people were talking about now in a different way. And it sort of unifies people on one issue rather than on one candidate. And so I think that I do think there's been a change, only, and it may be temporary, and I don't.
Well, let's see what Donald Trump comes up with. Yeah, if he wants to replace Obamacare, if the Republicans who tried over 60 times to repeal Obamacare and failed, if they're going to do it, and many people listening to the sound of my voice are now covered by the Affordable Care Act,
no question,
which is the proper name. So these are issues which need to be resolved, and they should be resolved in a political situation and not by a murder most foul.
It's hard to disagree with murder most foul, which murder tends to be, being the avenue to making things better. But I'm just saying, now that it's happened, maybe we go, maybe we have a different conversation about healthcare. And it's not just about the Affordable Care Act. It's about seeing the profits that are made and the coverage that's denied. And look, people are going to be talking about it. I'm talking about it more than I was before. My mother's talking about it. She's, she doesn't have to talk about it. And so I think that's important. In any case, we should move on to the things that we love.
Absolutely.
Which are the things that everybody hates, and that's politics. We're looking now. Let's start stateside, and then we'll go overseas. But John, this nomination process, and you and I have seen several of them, and it always seems like there are people that are new to witnessing them, and it's both frustrating and exciting because it means more people are interested, but they don't also know the precedent behind these things and how these vetting processes happen and how people posture and then they back down. I want to ask you about Pete Hegseth first. What do you think went right, and was anything ever going really wrong with Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense?
We know that there was an accusation of a drinking problem. We know there was accusation of sexual abuse, and that is why we have hearings. That is why when Donald Trump talked about bypassing the hearings or having a private firm investigate hearings or making a recess appointment, why we were so horrified. Every cabinet nominee and every person nominated for federal office should go through this process of being investigated. And may I say, the Trump administration seems to be waging a war against the Federal Bureau of Investigation. To be honest with you, you can be critical of things the FBI has done. Certainly I have been since the days of J. Edgar Hoover. But it's important to point out that their vetting of candidates has all been superlative. No one is complaining about the work the FBI has ever done in that area. And the fact that Donald Trump is talking about bypassing through these recess appointments, which, by the way, was used in the Bush administration to name John Bolton as ambassador to the United Nations. He could not secure the votes necessary for confirmation, and so he got a recess appointment. It is, to me, emblematic of the problem we have with the Trump process. And I hope that the senators will not roll over. There is a process. It should be followed. You either win or you lose on a vote of the full Senate. And that is what we expect when we talk about advise and consent, which is part of the process.
And I think it should be pointed out too that Donald Trump, it was said, and his transition team, whatever it was, in the days and maybe week after the election, was saying that they wanted to ask the Senate to dismiss and dispense with the nomination process and the vetting process, and actually kind of steamroll these people into their positions. And of course, that didn't happen, but that gives you an idea of how Trump sees the way our government works.
Of course, and that is what is so disturbing. By the way, just so we're clear, if this were a Democrat doing this kind of stuff, I would be just as angry. There is a process which preserves the American system, and that process needs to be observed.
Yeah, and it is being observed, and for
we don't
context,
know. We don't know whether it's being observed.
Well, we know
because
we know that they're going through this meeting with the senators, what has always been done, and that
but we have not had hearings.
We haven't had hearings on the floor yet. There have not been a floor vote. So yeah.
Well, of course, Donald Trump isn't president yet, and in order to do that, you have to have a nomination. But my point to you is the fact that they are talking about bypassing it, the fact that they are talking still about recess appointments, should disturb every American. And Republican senators and Democratic senators have a role to play constitutionally. And I hope that the structure of the American Constitution will be observed. Look, I was furious this week when Donald Trump talked about changing the 14th Amendment. Well, there's only one way to change the 14th Amendment. He did it on Meet the Press. If you got the clip on it, you can hear it. It was outrageous. The only way you amend the Constitution is by amending the Constitution. We have had one constitutional amendment that passed, which was then rescinded. That was the 18th Amendment, rescinded by the 20th Amendment, having to do with prohibition. If there is going to be a move to remove birthright voting or to change the 14th Amendment, then that needs to be done through a constitutional process. Donald Trump even alluded to the fact that he'd like to do it by executive order, and he can't.
You can't change the Constitution that way. 2/3 of the House, the Senate, and 3/4 of the states. And
that is correct.
And so it's not going to happen, no matter how
but
badly.
But the fact that he is suggesting it,
of course,
as the man who will take the oath of office on January 20th, there are 35 words. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is what the constitutional oath is all about. And what I worry about, what I fear, is Donald Trump's ignoring it. He did the same thing every time he hints about a third term, which, by the way, is not permissible under our law. When you take the oath of office, the way the Constitution is when you take the oath of office is the way you observe it. The only president who could have run past the 22nd Amendment was Harry Truman. But Harry Truman decided to observe it. He could have run for another term, even though the law had been passed, because when he took the oath of office, it wasn't in effect.
It wasn't in effect when he took the oath of office. Yeah. And people ask, they're always trying to find ways of skirting such a thing, right?
That's correct. And there is no way, and that is why the Constitution is so important to the preservation of our rights.
Yeah, and this is it's also built to be tested, and I think that this American Constitution, without getting too hokey about it, because I'm not, but this American Constitution has proven to be a fluid document. But by the same token, when people try and challenge it just because they think it's a good idea, it holds up against those challenges. And
unless you're an originalist on the Supreme Court.
Right.
And let me point out that the originalists maintain that the wording of the Constitution is what should be observed. And let me also indicate to you that if you want to change the Constitution, as you, Michael, so rightly pointed out, there is a method to doing it. And you know, and I know, that the number of constitutional amendments that have been proposed over the years are massive. And we know that very few of them are actually implemented.
Right. There's no question. So we have the case of Pete Hegseth. He seemed to be in trouble for a little bit. And then he seems to have rallied. And what people saw is Joni Ernst of Iowa saying that she had problems with him. And then the administration, the soon-to-be administration and his supporters saying, if you stand in the way of this, we're going to primary you. And then all of a sudden, Joni Ernst thinks, you know what? Pete Hegseth would be a great Secretary of Defense.
You're exactly right. And may I say, government by blackmail is not the kind of government that I believe is good for America.
Right. It has been part of America that Donald Trump and his people are not the first people to use blackmail.
No, Franklin Roosevelt in 1938 tried to purge Democrats who disagreed with him from being able to run. That's right. That's good. It's important to have those kind of challenges. But when you have a threat made against a sitting United States senator and that senator backs down, remember, she was a combat veteran. And her objection to Pete Hegseth had to do with the fact that he said he wouldn't put women in combat. Well, let me tell you, you're absolutely right when you say challenges are legitimate, but what motivates those challenges is what concerns me.
Yeah, and I think that what Ernst does is more reprehensible than what the Trump people say when they say we're going to challenge you. Okay, bring it on. I'm not going to compromise my morals and my beliefs that this is the wrong person for this to be Secretary of Defense because of his position on something that's very dear to me. I mean, you don't see that. You don't see Jefferson Smith.
No, people are afraid of Donald Trump.
Yeah,
that's the reality. And when you have a president who can intimidate with fear, that worries me. I worked for Richard Nixon. Believe me, I understand the ins and outs.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing with Donald Trump is so appalling to me, so against what I believe the American government and the American governing principles are. So that's why I react so strongly. And we'll see when there are hearings what comes out. By the way, do you remember John Tower, who was the senator from Texas?
Talked about him on the show the other. We talked about
he was the chairman of the Armed Services Committee.
Yeah.
In the end, withdrew from contention. He couldn't be confirmed because of his drinking problem, which I witnessed personally, and his abuse of women. And it wasn't brushed over. John Tower was a formidable figure.
Yeah.
And he had served with his colleagues who knew him. And yet no one that I have read so far has referred back to the Tower nomination and the implications thereof.
Well, I have. I said it on the show the other day. We talked.
Oh, good. It goes to show you why you're sitting in for our
Thompson. I was looking for the reason. Now I finally, maybe that's the reason. Okay, so we move though. I mean, there is an orchestration to this too. Like administrations, both Democratic and Republican, put up people who may not make it through, who they feel they're either indebted to or would be great, but I don't think they're going to get through, but I'm sending a message. But what I'm also doing is I'm sending someone to take the incoming so that these other ones will get through. And I think personally that Trump is most interested in Kash Patel of all these sort of controversial.
I agree.
Getting confirmed. But now we move on. If Hegseth
wait. You mentioned Kash Patel. Let me just say a word.
Yeah, you can go. Go ahead.
The current FBI director's term has another 2 years to go. He is going to have to be fired. Kash Patel will then have to be nominated. There will have to be, I hope, Senate hearings. But Kash Patel is an instrument of Donald Trump's revenge.
Right.
And I think it is very concerning when you have a director of the FBI who uses or intends to use the agency for the purpose of revenge against political opponents. That is exactly why a 10-year term following the J. Edgar Hoover departure through his death, that's why those kind of strictures were put on.
Well, let me tell you how up to date we are here on the Mark Thompson Show. While we've been on the air, John, the Christopher Wray, who is the head of the FBI, has announced his intention to resign. So he will be resigning. Well,
there was no question whether he resigned or was fired. He was going.
Yeah, exactly.
And isn't that shameful? Do you remember who appointed Wray and nominated Wray? It was Donald Trump.
It was Donald Trump.
This is not The Apprentice. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, for God's sake.
Yeah, he said he's going to serve until the end of January. He had 3 years remaining on his term as head of the FBI, and it's going to be so disappointing to so many people. People are not going to understand that. Look, I don't understand. I don't understand why Christopher Wray, if he's all about law and order, is not going to try and stay in the game here.
Because there's no way to stay in the game. Donald Trump has already announced he was going to fire him. So what Christopher Wray is doing is honorably saying, I know I'm going to be fired. I'm going to resign. Let's go through this process, because there's no way he can hang on. But do you understand, again, it is a disregard for the nature of the law which reformed the FBI so it could not be used for political purposes. That's what's so shocking.
Okay. I'm with, and it sucks. There's no other way to put it, because he knew it was what was coming down the pike, and you know it, and so many do. But I think that what irks a lot of people, when I'm out in the field covering politics, what irks a lot of people is people not staying in the fight and not sticking.
There was no fight. He has no fight.
Right. He has no fight. What I'm saying is, if he were to have been fired, right, I think it would have made a lot of people say, look how petty, look how terrible, look how X, Y, and Z Donald Trump is. I'm saying it from the point of view of the people who think that he is. And so,
well, whether he is or he isn't, Wray knew, because already his potential successor, Kash Patel, is up on Capitol Hill. It's a fait accompli. There's no point in being a martyr. And so what Wray has done is actually a brilliant move. He's saying, okay, I'll go. Let's see if you will confirm Kash Patel. Now, take a look at what Kash Patel has said. Don't listen to what the analysts say. There are clips of Kash Patel weaponizing, saying he will weaponize the Federal Bureau of Investigation in order to crush Donald Trump's enemies. That, to me, is enough of a disqualification. That's not what the FBI is all about. It's not a private police force for a president of the United States, pure and simple.
Agreed. And maybe it's just my personal, and you're right. And I get why he's doing it, obviously, because why bother, entering a fight that you're going to lose?
There is no fight. That's the point. If he could fight, he would.
I mean, probably. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think there's no question.
Here's what Christopher Wray said today. He said, after weeks of careful thought, I've decided the right thing for the Bureau is for me to serve until the end of the current administration in January and then step down. My goal, he said, is to keep the focus on our mission, the indispensable work you are doing on behalf of the American people. He said, in my view, this is the best way to avoid dragging the Bureau deeper into the fray while reinforcing the values and principles that are so important to how we do our work. That it should go without saying that this is not easy for me, he said. I love this place, I love our mission, and I love our people, but my focus is and always has been on us and doing what's right for the FBI.
3 cheers for him, and if only Kash Patel would have said the same things, but he isn't. He's talking about revenge, and that is something that should disturb every American. And by the way, what I'll really be interested in is the implication for the agents in the FBI and how they react to it. That'll be very interesting to watch too.
Yeah, it's always about the rank and file, and then and what the morale of the Bureau will be. And frankly, the incoming administration doesn't really seem to care about the morale of the Bureau, because of the way they look at the politicization, what they call the politicization of the Justice Department. Let's go quickly. Kim, you can tell me about time here, but I'm gonna go through a couple of more names here and with John, and then go to Syria, and then we'll let him have some lunch. The Robert F. Kennedy Jr. For Health and Human Services. All of a sudden now, there are, not that there weren't questions about him, but there are questions about his being able to be confirmed. What's your feeling?
I interviewed Bobby Kennedy Jr. 3 times. I can tell you he is completely unfit to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. A man who not only opposes the vaccination program, but who had the chutzpah, and I'm using that word intentionally, to suggest that the COVID virus was engineered so that Ashkenazi Jews would not suffer. I mean, you listen to this kind of claptrap and you wonder what it means. And I'm not even going to get into the question of the water question, which he is now suggesting he wants to. Well, I mean, it is so beyond the scope of reasonable men and women in terms of discussion about health and human services. It is almost incomprehensible. He has no qualification. He has been discredited. He's a man who believes in conspiracy theories, a man who has made these statements over the years. Maybe if I hadn't sat in the studio with him, I might have had some suggestion that maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. But his record is clear and indefensible.
I'm not going to certainly sit and disagree with you. I interviewed him once, but it was on the 50th anniversary of his father's assassination. We talked pretty much just about his book and his dad, so we didn't really get into a lot of policy. And that was 6 years ago now. But
can you imagine eliminating chlorine from water? I mean, do you understand? The dentists of America have made a statement. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Right. Let's talk about the politics. Let's talk about, will he get confirmed?
Yes, if the Republicans in the United States Senate don't develop a backbone, he will be confirmed, as will all the other nominees.
What about, if one is going to go down, wouldn't it be a Democrat? I'm going to throw a couple of things at you. Then my far-fetched into deep theory is that his wanting to get rid of high fructose corn syrup and abolish that from all of our soft drinks and junk food is going to bother, because we've all covered Iowa caucuses and we know how they are on ethanol. It's going to bother the corn producing senators from corn producing states, to the point where they don't care about putting him in power if that's going to be on his agenda. Do you see any promise for that?
No, I don't see any. Look, you summed it up beautifully, Michael, at the very beginning. The threat of primary challenges. The Republicans in the Senate are afraid of Donald Trump. And that is a serious problem, because unless you have a backbone and courage, I think that says it all.
I agree, but just as Trump could challenge them if they're standing up for corn farmers, I mean, like, there is no fluoride lobby. There probably is, but there's not one that we can look at here that you're from a fluoride producing state. So what removing fluoride from the water is going to have a political impact. But challenging big ag and challenging corn could, with some reason.
Let's see what happens. I'm not a prophet. All I can tell you is, so far, there's no backbone. And you're right, there is no fluoride lobby, except we all know that our teeth are in better shape than our parents and grandparents, and that's because of fluoride.
Right. And the British. Oh, sorry. Sorry, my dogs enjoyed my.
Well, I don't blame your dog for barking. I'd be upset too.
My dogs love fluoride. And then before we let you go, let's go to Syria. The new leadership, I guess, of Syria is promising all good things. They're saying all the right things. When do we say we're believing them, or we've stopped believing them?
Well, first of all, we're acting preemptively. The Israelis, the United States, Turkey are all taking out the munitions, which are very dangerous. And as you understand, this is all being done in a relatively coordinated fashion. Remember, the Turks have another agenda, and that is to make sure that their political opposition does not surface in a way which would be harmful. That has to do with the Kurds, of course. So where we stand right now is we don't know. We do know this. Vladimir Putin was very badly hurt by what has happened. We know that Iran was very badly hurt by what has happened. We know that there is a fear in the Arab and Muslim world of the implications because of Iran. And so we are now waiting. One thing is clear, and I think it should be made clear: the United States, whether with a President Biden or a President Trump, has made clear they were not involved. We were not involved in the overthrow of this government. And I want to believe that to be true. I think it probably is. But there's a broader question. The Israelis are not going to roll over and allow another radical Islamic regime on their border to wreak havoc, just as the Israelis did with Hezbollah in Lebanon, decimating Hezbollah, just as they are trying to do, and I believe achieving a modicum of success with Hamas. It is a great cost, do you understand? Because many innocent people in Gaza, in Lebanon, and beyond have been killed. But the simple truth is the Israelis are not going to roll over and play dead for anybody. And that is what people have to understand. You know, I always remember the late Menachem Begin once saying, "We are not a banana republic, we are not a vassal state." And I think the essence of Israel's position is, and you're seeing it around the world with Jews being attacked. You heard what happened in Melbourne, Australia, where a synagogue was burned to the ground. And the Jewish community in Melbourne, Australia, is horrified. I have friends in Melbourne, the stories they've told me of their insecurity. And of course, we had the same thing here in Michigan last month, where the Diary of Anne Frank was being performed in Detroit, and there were people protesting. Frankly, radical Islamists were protesting the showing or the portrayal of the Diary of Anne Frank on the stage. The hatred of Jews and the rise in anti-Semitism, if you want to call it that, is very disturbing. And I can tell you, whatever political troubles Benjamin Netanyahu has, whether he is prime minister or not, the Israelis are going to respond with great vigor. And I'm delighted to tell you, and I think it's very important, that Joe Biden and Donald Trump had exactly the same response. And one of the things that the world is looking at now is, do we have a unified foreign policy? What will happen to NATO? Last night, I sat with Betsy Rosenberg, who many people will recall on KCBS and then nationally, reporting on the environment. And she reviewed with me. She's moved back to Northern California. She reviewed with me what is going on now in terms of environmental action and the withdrawal, which Donald Trump has announced again from the Paris Accords and his concept of drill, baby, drill. We are in for an environmental crisis of monumental impact, not only on us, but on our children and our grandchildren. And so I point this out again very respectfully, but elections have consequences, and this consequence is profoundly disturbing.
Yeah, there's no question. We're going to be talking about that in the second hour as well. John Rothman, thank you for your time and input and opinion. And
Michael, can I just thank you? It was a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Mark Thompson holiday party.
Exactly, I will be there. I cannot wait, and we will have a good time. And Mark,
put it up again, because Mark, I think there's a limited number.
Mark, for once, will probably show up too. Yes, it's Saturday, December 21st, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and you can sign up at our PayPal with a $50 donation to lock up a spot. And when you make that donation, note meetup with that donation so we know. And the RSVP is to mtsmeetup@gmail.com. I hope that I'm going to be unwrapping a mug at our Christmas party. Or at Mark's.
Well, let's hope you're unwrapping one and not being mugged.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that will help. Having done both, I'll take the unwrapping. So
look forward to seeing you at the holiday party. Thank you,
John. Thanks a lot. Take care. So we have a big wrap up with John Rothman. That was terrific. Kim, I think we should probably have a little bit of news. What do you think?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Ooh, I hate being big, so let's put up the news slide. I think we have one of those. This report, though, is sponsored by the fine people at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. We'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Again, as mentioned, FBI Director Christopher Wray is resigning. President-elect Trump has already tapped former Justice Department prosecutor Kash Patel to replace Wray. Wray was appointed by Trump in 2017. The Franklin fire here in California, Malibu area, has burned almost 4,000 acres. It is only 7% contained. Los Angeles County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney confirms 9 structures have been damaged and 7 destroyed. According to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, 12,600 people are still under mandatory evacuation orders, and nearly 7,400 have been issued evacuation warnings. The wildfire started late Monday night. It quickly spread as flames were pushed by strong Santa Ana winds. Police say the fingerprints of the suspect accused of killing United Healthcare CEO in New York last week match those that were found at the scene. That, according to multiple reports, it is the first forensic match that investigators say tie the suspect, Luigi Mangione, to the scene where Brian Thompson was killed. Mangione remains in custody in Pennsylvania, where he is fighting extradition back to New York. He was arrested on Monday after being spotted by folks at a McDonald's. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reportedly making some phone calls to advocate for the appointment of his daughter-in-law, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, to become the deputy director of the CIA. Apparently, RFK Jr. faces uncertain confirmation as Health and Human Services Secretary. The 77 Nobel Prize winners came forward and declared him unqualified for that job. And his daughter-in-law carries a little bit of trouble along with her as well. She submitted the eventually published memoir of her life as a CIA spy in 2019 and didn't get approval from the organization. The Huffington Post says that's a no-no. NBC also reported this, and a few former CIA officers claimed some details of life undercover, coming of age in the CIA, sounded like it wasn't true. Now RFK Jr. wants Amaryllis Fox Kennedy to become the deputy director of the CIA. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is testifying before a House committee over the withdrawal from Afghanistan. The testimony comes almost 3 months after the House Foreign Affairs Committee voted to recommend Blinken be held in contempt of Congress after a standoff related to him appearing before the panel to discuss the deadly evacuation in 2021. Republicans on the committee put out a report in September that said the Biden administration misled the public about the end of the war in that country. Albertsons is axing its merger with fellow grocery giant Kroger. This comes one day after a federal court blocked the proposed merger. Albertsons has filed a lawsuit, or had filed a lawsuit in Delaware, accusing Kroger of failing to do all it could to secure regulatory approval of this deal, as spelled out in the merger agreement. Kroger had previously agreed to a $600 million breakup fee if the deal didn't go through. Yesterday, a federal judge said the merger would eliminate head-to-head competition between the two chains, leading to higher prices for shoppers. So it's a goner, that deal. A Chinese national living in the Los Angeles area is behind bars on suspicion of flying a drone over Vandenberg Space Force Base in Santa Barbara County. Federal authorities said the 39-year-old used this drone to take photos of the military base in Lompoc on November 30th. He was arrested at San Francisco International Airport on Monday as he was just about to climb aboard a flight to China. He has been charged with failure to register an aircraft and not providing transportation or violation of national defense airspace. Alex Murdaugh is appealing his double murder conviction. Yesterday, he filed an appeal in South Carolina's Supreme Court in an effort to get a new trial for the murders of his wife and son in 2021. His lawyers argued the jury was unfairly prejudiced against him after they were shown information regarding his financial crimes, information they say wasn't relevant to this murder case at all. The appeal also alleges a former county clerk improperly swayed members of the jury to find Murdaugh guilty. So he's asking for another trial. Authorities in Northern California recently seized nearly 7 pounds of cocaine and thousands of fentanyl pills in 2 separate drug busts. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office says a 29-year-old man was arrested with the cocaine, valued at about $45,000. That in another case, a 24-year-old man was arrested after officials found nearly 70,000 fentanyl pills and 33 pounds of powdered fentanyl, enough to potentially cause more than 10.5 million overdose deaths. Deputies say it's enough to kill most of the people in Northern California. So, yikes. There is a historic Victorian home in Chico known as the Bidwell Mansion. It was heavily damaged by fire this morning. Flames that are believed to be from an illegal warming fire prompted by authorities to search for a person leaving as flames engulfed the 12,000 square foot 3-story building. The mansion has been a Northern California landmark for 150 years. It's been closed for renovation since the spring. It was set to reopen next year. No, not going to happen. We mentioned a fire in the Malibu area. The red flag fire warning for Los Angeles and Ventura counties ends tonight. The National Weather Service in Oxnard says the warning expires at 6 p.m. for most inland areas, 2 p.m. closer to the coast. Forecasters have dropped the fire warning designation, meaning we're no longer in a particularly dangerous situation in this area. The federal funding for California's high-speed rail project could dry up under the incoming Trump administration. On the X account for the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, a bullet point of the summary of the project was laid out. And according to the Post, in 2008, the project was projected to cost $33 billion. The latest estimate is between $88.5 and $128 billion. The original completion date was 2020. No passengers have been transported as of this year. DOGE says that most of the line has not been fully designed yet. California has received $6.8 billion in federal funds for this high-speed rail project and is asking for an additional $8 billion, and it looks like DOGE says no to that. Apple is integrating ChatGPT into its devices in a software rollout. OpenAI's popular AI chatbot will be available for the Siri voice assistant and the new writing tools feature on Apple products with iOS 18.2. While users ask Siri a complex question, or when they do, it might suggest they allow access to ChatGPT, so Siri can then provide a response using it. That way, the users won't need to switch back and forth between all of the apps. And the deadlines are fast approaching to get your holiday cards and packages in the mail in time for Christmas. The deadline to send first class mail or to use the post office ground advantage, December 18th. Priority mail should go out by December 19th. Priority mail express items should be sent by December 21st. So the deadlines are all approaching. And apparently, people are trying to flock to the post office to beat the deadline. The University of South Florida, lastly, has just graduated its second youngest student in school history. That is 16-year-old Bailey Aguilar, who doesn't even have a driver's license yet, but as of this week, does have a college degree. Bailey graduated from high school at 13, got her associate's degree at 15, and now has her bachelor's degree in biology. Next, she plans to go to veterinary school as she works on one day becoming a vet. And this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, with so many wonderful things for the holiday season. The Christmas blend, or the holiday blend rather, the winter solstice tea, so good. I'm giving some as gifts. So it's going to be really great to have people open that and to share the gift of Coachella Valley coffee with people. It is so good. Mark says that it is the best coffee he's ever had. I'll tell you, I'm a Coachella Valley tea addict. Absolutely. The beans are fresh. The way they procure the beans, a wonderful thing to do, and propping up female-owned businesses in areas of the world that need all the where women need all the help that we can get. So they do a lot of things right at Coachella Valley Coffee. Cliff is lovely. If you have ordered anything from Coachella Valley Coffee, he routinely sends little extras, things that you don't expect that are such a gift when you get your package in the mail. Please take advantage of the Mark Thompson Show discount. Type in Mark T at checkout, no spaces altogether, Mark T, and you'll get 10% off of your total at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
So I'm not Mark Thompson. Which one is Mark Thompson? Not me. Mark Thompson out for the week. You got three, like almost 2 and change days left of me. Kim, thanks for reading the news. It's great when you do the Coachella Valley Coffee Company and you talk about your tea and your coffee, and you probably have a mug to drink it out of. Just saying. That's all. I'm going to leave it right there.
It's not fake. That's real.
Yeah. Exactly. Albert, before we're going to talk about Trump again, but a little light, we're going to cheat here. We're going to talk about hockey for 60 seconds because we can, and the boss is away, so we can sit and talk hockey on the air. Let's talk about your resurgent Sharks. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. We just made a trade. One of your former goalies from the Rangers was on the Avalanche, struggling big time, but we got a second round pick. We got a young player out of it. It's I'm feeling really good. Actually.
Yeah, and Giovanni Smith, I don't know what happened with him. I thought he was good. I think he'll, I didn't understand why he never got a shot with Warshavsky, but but maybe that's what happens, and he'll be okay. And
I mean, he got an upgrade with the Avalanche along with Mackenzie Blackwood, so hopefully they could.
Well, I mean, but maybe it's an upgrade. Georgiev's a good goalie. He was a Rangers goalie. He did well when Shesterkin was out. He did well for the Avalanche for a while. He had the most wins in hockey last year, but I still think that something was going wrong, and maybe the change of scenery will help. This has been your Mark Thompson Show, Hockey Timeout. Let's talk about hockey. While the boss is off playing and doing other things. So let's now return. I mean, people who don't want to talk about hockey probably want to talk about Donald Trump less, but it's the reality among us now. We can start with light Trump, although there really isn't much, but Kimberly Guilfoyle, right? I see already people complaining. What happened here? Mark leaves for a week, and this is now a sports talk format. We talked about hockey 47 seconds. Let's go to Canada and get donuts at Tim Hortons. I'd be fine with that. 47 seconds of hockey talk. Indulge your guest host. He wants to talk about hockey, and it's all over with. Let's go to Greece. See how much you like that. Tell me you want to talk about hockey after we talk about Kimberly Guilfoyle being nominated to be the ambassador to Greece. Now, she is supposedly, Kim, and this is not something I'm totally up on, not in a relationship with the first son-elect anymore. Is that right?
The rumor has it that they were engaged. Kimberly Guilfoyle, the former First Lady of San Francisco, formerly wed to Gavin Newsom, was in a relationship, engaged to marry Donald Trump Jr., and you've seen her at all of these MAGA events, screaming into the microphone and them, canoodling. Well, apparently the relationship has hit the skids. It's on the rocks. And he has been seen holding hands with this socialite in Florida named Bettina Anderson. There's Bettina. And it looks like...
He doesn't have a type, that's for sure.
No. It looks like that possibly this is the best breakup gift in the history of breakup gifts. On the backs of the American taxpayer, Kimberly Guilfoyle gets a I guess I'll call it a golden parachute straight out of the Donald Trump Jr. relationship, and gets this ambassadorship to Greece.
Right.
What?
She doesn't get her big fat Greek wedding. She gets her appointment. Yeah, I guess that's how you could look at it, and that's certainly what it seems like. Ambassadorships to non-strategic countries are always given to people who are, friends of the president, donors to the president's election. This is a curious one. And I don't think there's ever been anybody of this level who has, I don't know if there's precedent for this. I mean, this is crazy to me that Kimberly Guilfoyle, and you said you've seen her and you've heard her. If you go to a Trump rally before Trump's plane lands, she's out there, and you said it right, screaming. It is deafening listening to her, and so I can't. It's like it's just bizarre that this person, and this is what's happened. And then we heard earlier that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is poised to name Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, married to his son Eric, the president-elect's son-in-law, daughter-in-law, to be the senator from Florida to serve out the remaining term of Marco Rubio, who will be Secretary of State. And so it's just all crazy that these people, it is once again the family business. And it's never like that in politics. You have people who have had, you had Kennedy have RFK as his attorney general. But that person had to be approved by the Senate. It's a lot different. People asking, how much Greek does she speak? I don't know. I usually go like this when she's speaking English. So I don't know if she can speak Greek at all.
She has no diplomatic experience. She does have a law degree and, maybe a little bit of legal experience, but she doesn't, and she's got broadcasting experience. She was on Fox News for a while, but she doesn't have any diplomatic experience. She's another person who, if you're looking for a qualification, doesn't really have any as far as an ambassadorship. Someone called it my big fat breakup. Yeah, it seems like a breakup settlement, doesn't it? Like, okay, well, if you're going to dump me, what do I get?
Right.
We'll send you to Greece. You get a long-term vacay to Greece.
It's the prenup, right? If you do this, you're going to be. We talked with. I brought up Charles Guiteau, who was the assassin of James Garfield, and Charles Guiteau was a deranged office seeker who fancied himself the ambassador to France, and he was so nuts that people dismissed him, and he wasn't on many people's radar, but he kept. Petitioning to Garfield to make him the ambassador to France. And of course he wasn't. He was a crazy man who then shot Garfield. But now we have, the ambassador to Greece. It makes no sense to me. Like this is who we are sending to represent our country, who has zero qualification and doesn't really seem to have the elegance of an ambassador that you would kind of appoint to represent the country, even if they were, not qualified. If they were, then somebody said nepotism is so rampant. It is, and it's more rampant in the Trump house than it is anywhere else. You saw that he made Lara Trump the head of the Republican National Committee. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner had plum jobs in the White House, and then and now you have Lara Trump, going to the Senate. It would appear. And Kimberly Guilfoyle going to Greece. Like it could be the breakup gift, but it could also be, hey, Dad, I got to get rid of Kimberly.
Get her away from me. Yeah.
I'll send her to Greece, right? And there's an Eagles song. The Greeks don't want no freaks. Well, the Greeks got one, it seems. Well, we have all you got to do is get dumped by Don Jr. to get a Greek ambassador gig. That's great. Yeah, no, it's true. It would be great if the next Democratic president were not to be Gavin Newsom, made Gavin Newsom the ambassador to Greece, because then you'd have, come full circle there. And do we really think that Lara Trump will be in the Senate? I do, but I'm not certain of it. I mean, there's a reporter who told me, and I don't think I should say who, because he hasn't reported it yet, but who texted me that it looks like it's going to be Lara, and he's a Florida-based national political reporter, and so I think that I go with what he has to say, and the only thing that makes me curious about it is that DeSantis is posturing now, and whether he postures away from Trump and he thinks that's the best avenue, or postures toward him, was always a question. It seems like he's posturing toward him, because I'm sure Trump called and said, please name Lara, or name Lara to the open Senate seat. And it'll be a 2-year term. She'll be fill out the rest of Rubio's term, and then someone, presumably Trump, will run. I think that it puts that seat in jeopardy, even in Florida, going down the road, but it's a little early for that.
All in the family. Got to get everybody a job.
All in the family, right? And Meathead's running the show. So, and we'll keep going, because I always like to, and this isn't about Kimberly Guilfoyle, but I always like to talk about when the press is under threat, because in Trump world, it happens quite a bit. And right now you have Tom Cotton, who is a senator from Arkansas, and I'm trying to bring it up here, is doing he's holding up something called the Press Act, which was passed last year. And what the Press Act is it protects the press, right? So it's a shield law that would protect journalists from revealing their sources, right? And it would and Cotton is holding it up because he said that it would be a threat to national security. So the undermining of the press is already happening before Trump has even taken the oath again. And the detriment that he did with the whole fake news and making that part of the way we speak in America and now taking away protections that the press had, which is giving more power to the government, giving more power to national security forces and the CIA and the agencies, because they could compel you to reveal your sources, which is exactly the wrong thing. I think this Tom Cotton holding this up is really, really dangerous thing that's happening right now. And I don't know that it's to remain that way because they can bring it up. Cotton said the liberal media doesn't deserve more protections. And you should know that Tom Cotton will be the chair of the Intelligence Committee next year. He said the press badge doesn't make you better than the rest of America or put you above the law. Nobody's saying that, right? I mean, you are telling the story. You're the fourth estate. You are a wing of our free press that it's super important to be able to get the sources and get the story. Otherwise, you won't have that transparency as much as it's hidden. But there are people who have sponsored this legislation that are not just Democrats, right? I mean, you have Mike Lee of Utah, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. So its passage ultimately, it will probably happen. But the fact that Tom Cotton is blocking it is telling of where we are going the next 4 years in regards to the press, Kim.
So the Press Act stands for Protect Reporters from Exploitative State Spying Act is what it stands for. It passed the House in January on a voice vote. It has bipartisan support, except from Mr. Cotton of Arkansas. But the question I have for you is this, because the press and their ability to not reveal sources, haven't we legislated that? And isn't there Supreme Court rulings supporting the press? Why did we need the Press Act to kind of maintain the status quo that we've had in the media?
Because the Press Act, I mean, that status quo was being challenged. They were forcing people to reveal their sources. It happened at the New York Times. It happened at CBS News. And they're saying you should not, if you go to court, for example, if you're in court, or if you're before a Senate committee, you should not be compelled to reveal your sources. And it also puts reporters in danger too. So if you break someone's confidence, and you have the confidence of very many people when you're reporting on politics, especially if you're reporting intelligence, which I've never done, but the people that do put themselves in a different kind of danger because retribution is often part of it, and that confidence and that being off the record takes on a whole different meaning. And so, sure, being able to come before the Senate, before a judge, and say, I cannot reveal my source is very important. And that's what, and there have been challenges to that. So this codifies it so that there cannot be challenges to it. Yeah. It's a response, not a initiative.
Well, he said the liberal media doesn't deserve more protections. Mr. Cotton said the press badge doesn't make you better than the rest of America, and it doesn't put you above the law. That's what Cotton says.
Yeah, it's right. When I read that, I thought, well, who in the press? I mean, the press badge gets you by a rope line sometimes, but nobody thinks you're above the law when you do it. You just think you have access because you do. And that's the idea behind the press badge, is to give the press, which is the vehicle of the people, the access to what's there. And, Cotton is somebody who was, by the way, considered at one point as a running mate to Trump in the early conversations. He is a strict conservative, and he is a military guy, and he is somebody who the most conservative minds within the Republican Party look at as a down the road presidential contender or candidate. And he is always going to be, over the next 4 years, trying to burnish those credentials so that he can go up against whoever is next. And he looks at everyone else as a lightweight, does Cotton. I know that from having covered him a little bit on the Hill, but not directly. So it's certainly an interesting place that we're in right now in regards to the press because of things like what Tom Cotton's doing. And you mentioned during the news, Kim, switching this a little bit, is our drone. There was the Chinese national who was arrested in California. But there are drones. There are unidentified drones flying over New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and Governor Phil Murphy has said these are apparently, as I understand it, very sophisticated. And there's a member of Congress now who's saying that Iran is the owner of these drones. And it says the minute Murphy went on to say, this is the Democratic governor of New Jersey, the minute you get eyes on them, they go dark. And we're obviously most concerned about sensitive targets and sensitive critical infrastructure. So they don't know for sure, and I can't say for sure. Maybe they do, but I don't know for sure where these are coming from, and if in fact they are if they're coming from Iran. But the fact that you have governors and not sort of out there governors talking about it means that that we're dealing with something that is kind of wild right now, right?
Yeah, and some of these drones, they say, are the size of SUVs. I mean, they're big. They're like, giant drones, and then they go dark and no one knows what they're doing up there or why. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's super creepy. But it's also scary, I guess, especially if you hear that the governor of New Jersey said we should be alarmed by this in some way.
Right. I guess they've got military installations there. I mean, your mind goes to what could they be looking for, and who are the, who's looking at what, and so you think of all the most sensitive things they could be trying to get eyes on, right?
Right, absolutely, and they're on it, and so that's. The drone conversation is getting more serious just because of the people that are talking about it. Not, it's not just the your usual UFO crowd, right? These are people. This is real and this is happening. We'll stay in the Senate very quickly. Bernie Sanders, who just won re-election, said that his next term will likely be his last term in the Senate. It will be his fourth Senate term. He also served in Congress. He's 80. It was in the article, but I think he's 83 years old. And Charles Grassley is the oldest member of the Senate now, I think in his 90s. And I don't see Sanders wanting to serve there. It will have been 52 years on Capitol Hill. And not to mention he was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. But when you look at it's not just Bernie Sanders, right? And we were talking about it with Tom Cotton before. In politics, you look at to whom the baton's being passed as well. And so we want always in politics the next X, Y, or Z, but many of those people don't come along. So if he is the most profound and certainly successful progressive voice on Capitol Hill and in the national conversation, who takes that over? Who takes that mantle over? It was talked about in the civil rights movement after King was gone, and after the Voting Rights Act, when the things like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, they disbanded. that didn't mean that the fight for civil rights was over, but there was no organization, there was no figurehead to that organization to keep them together. And so again, you look at this and say, well, who takes over the mantle of the progressive? It's got to be somebody with the same kind of national charisma and the fire that Sanders had, that was able to appeal even in his 70s to people who were in their teens, and that's a rare bird. So I think it's something that the progressive movement has to be kind of galvanizing around, and that should be Sanders' legacy, is trying to figure out who would be next there in line. So I think
he's 83. And
He's
he
80.
said he'll be 89 when he gets out. So he said, you do the math of figuring. He said he's assuming probably that's his last. That's it. He'll be almost 90.
I don't know. I would assume probably. You
Yeah.
could see him saying those words, that's a direct quote, because he speaks pretty frankly, and he probably hates that question, like he hates a lot of questions. But that's certainly one that I'm sure he despises having to answer. So yeah, again, it's a bigger conversation just because of the space he takes up in the political conversation in general. So do we have our guest in? I guess we don't.
I don't know if Belinda's here quite yet. Not quite yet. She's not. She should be along any moment.
All right, she should be along any moment. That's fine. There's no. She can. There's plenty for us to talk about. But I want to talk about. I want to just show this video because it's unbelievable on a lot of counts, and this has nothing to do with very much other than a Utah man drove his car through the window at I think it's a Mazda dealership or a Subaru dealership. I think it was a Mazda dealership in Sandy, Utah. He bought the car earlier in the day, and he had buyer's remorse and said he wanted to return it, was told he couldn't return it, and that's what he did.
I thought you were allowed to return cars within a certain amount of time. Like, isn't there the lemon law?
It's a California lemon law. I don't know if it carries over to Utah.
Not in Utah. You drive it off the lot, you're stuck with it. That's it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. He was arrested later, and he said, "I'm going to come in and I'm going to drive the car through the front door since you're not letting me return it." So he did that. No one seems to have been hurt. I guess this video cuts it off. I watched the dance version, the longer version of this video, and all the people who worked in the dealership, they all looked the same, and they had the same body type, and they were wearing the same clothes, and it just made me laugh. I thought it was hysterical.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
I do think Belinda Weymouth has joined us now.
Well, then we should bring Belinda Weymouth in if she's joined us now, because we don't have to talk about Utah car dealerships anymore. So what you're telling me, Kim, by telling me Belinda is here, is you're saying it's time for It's the Planet, Stupid.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's time.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet, stupid. No. It's the planet, stupid.
Very nice. I like that open. And of course, again, all the things you learn when you guest host are all the things that you don't have when you're just a contributor and a guest on the show, which I don't have my own open. Mark says something about me, but that's a well-produced intro. Belinda Weymouth, thanks for joining me on the show. We have no Mark, and congratulations on a spectacular open and lead-in to your piece. Oh, I think we need you to unmute.
That is the first time I've ever done that. I think I got thrown by your she sounded a little bit jealous of my intro. I know it's really good.
If I sounded, it's because I am. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we better talk to Mark about this and get you one like that. Because I have to say, when that intro comes in, you're in for some serious planetary business, right?
100%. I mean, and that's it's really it's exciting. And Mark will say, and it's Michael Shore. And he doesn't say it quite like that, but it's certainly not what you have. So we'll put it on the list of things with which I have to talk to Mark about. I'm excited to be talking to you. I know Mark is a great custodian of the environment and loves talking about it, and through his history of meteorology and politics knows a lot about it, and is always excited to have you on. We do hear a lot of bad news, and it appears we have good news, and I love to lead with good news when it's there. Can you tell me why we should be speaking a little bit about it?
Okay, so it's all good news today. All good news.
Great.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. So on Monday, the EPA banned 2 horrible, toxic chemicals that have been in use for way, way too long, and we've known that they're bad, and they've still been in circulation. So one is PERC, and PERC is perchloroethylene, and the other one is known, its abbreviated form is TCE, and it's trichloroethylene. PERC is used in dry cleaning, so people might have heard it through there, and it's also used, and people say that it's been being phased out for a while, just so you know, like California banned it in 2007, and the ban took full effect last year, 2023. And it is being phased out in dry cleaning facilities all over the country, and it's also used in auto repair as a solvent. So this has been in progress, but when you get an actual federal ban saying, okay, PERC has got to go, and there can be no more, PERC used in dry cleaning facilities, this is really big. And the other one, the trichloroethylene, it's awful. It's a degreaser. It's used in furniture care, and it's also used in auto repair products. These 2 substances are linked to immune, reproductive, and nervous system damage in us human beings. They're also linked to liver and kidney cancer, to Hodgkin's lymphoma, to leukemia, and then also, Michael, to a cancer called multiple myeloma, which is a cancer of the white blood cells that I'm in remission from. So this is pretty personal for me. It's pretty huge. And the EPA announced back in June of 2023, that this was going to happen. They had this, year and a half almost of, people could make public comments and then get used to the idea, industry, dry cleaners, that this stuff is coming to an end. And of course, there are exceptions, and they're, have been given a sort of a cushiony timeline to be able to do it. TCE is used in EV batteries. It's used in refrigerants. And so there are certain things where they're being given some leeway. But the fact is that there have been safer alternatives that we have known about for a long time. So why haven't we been using them? This has been a long time coming. So it's really a big deal, and people are very, very happy about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely thrilling. And when something happens to you in your life, and there's action taken that would mitigate that for other people, it's got to be thrilling. It hasn't happened to me, but I'm sure that the fact that it's personal for you, I can tell from the way you talk about it how important it is, and that's really nice. So I'm happy on that end. Tell me a little bit about our exposure to these things in general.
So how TCE got on the radar? It happened in the 1980s, and there was a woman. So there's a town in Massachusetts, north of Boston. It's called Woburn, and it's industrial. And people who are using the TCE in industrial plants, they're dumping it after they've used it. So they were dumping it. It was going into the soil. It percolates down. It gets into the aquifers. Then it's in your drinking water. And the awful thing about it also is it's colorless and odorless. So these workers who were dumping it vaporizes super quickly. So they were just inhaling it. And even in low doses, TCE and PERC are really toxic. So what happened was it's percolating down into the water. So the people who are then drinking that water, it's coming out of their taps in the bathroom, in the kitchen, taps is how I say faucets. So there was this woman, Ann Anderson, and she noticed like her water, it looked disgusting. It didn't taste good.
Right.
She had to keep replacing the pipes that went from the taps, in her kitchen and in her bathroom sinks because they would rust. But the terrible thing that happened was her 3-year-old son, a little kid called Jimmy, got diagnosed with leukemia. And she found out that he wasn't the only child in that area who had leukemia. And Massachusetts has...
Is this the genesis of the Jimmy Fund? Is this
yeah, because it went to in 1980 they passed the Superfund law, and it was because of Jimmy Anderson, because they knew, partly due to him, the passage of that law, and it was about cleaning up hazardous waste sites. I don't know exactly if it's called the Jimmy Fund as well as Superfund.
I say that because anyone who has been to Fenway Park, where they play baseball in Boston, there's always an ad in left field or right field, a billboard for the Jimmy Fund, and it only says the Jimmy Fund, right? And it doesn't say anything. It's part of the Dana-Farber Cancer Group, I think, but I wonder if that's the genesis of that, if it was based on this story you're telling me, but it might not be. It just could be a coincidence that the kid's name is Jimmy and Woburn. So
I don't think so. If it's linked to a cancer organization, absolutely not, because this poor kid died 9 years later. And this was really a big deal. And the Superfund site, law is a huge deal, that you have to clean up these toxic waste sites. But so this was in the 1980s. And so for his mother, who's now in her 80s, this has been a long time coming, a long time coming. And what she did was she teamed up with EPA officials, and then there's this fabulous congressman from Massachusetts, Ed Markey. And Ed Markey is a real environmental champion. He's been great on climate change. And he really helped with the TCE, getting it on the radar, working towards this ban. So it's been a long time coming, and it's,
He's a U.S. senator now, Ed Markey, too.
Yes, senator, not congressman.
He was in Congress forever and ever.
Yeah, and now he's a senator. Yes, and he's fantastic. He's just so good with environmental stuff. So he's one of my heroes. One of the so the thing about, I'll just speak personally, because obviously I know a lot about the cancer that I have. So when I was getting my stem cell transplant back in December of 2021, it was. So I'm coming up on my 3rd birthday. It's in 2 days' time. I have 2 birthdays now. So when I was coming up on getting this horrible treatment where they replace they kill all your blood cells with this nasty chemo, and then they put your stem cells, which they've taken out before they do that, back in. And they say happy birthday on the day that it happens, because they're bringing you back to life. And it's pretty intense. Right. But one of the nurses said to me, it used to be black men in their 70s who got this cancer, not everybody. And now it's everybody. And it was black men in their 70s because they were working in oil refineries, and they were around benzene and also some of these solvents. So it was much more... It wasn't an everyone cancer. Right. And then one of the stories that I read not long after I'd had my stem cell transplant was about Fort Ord, which is a military base here in California in Monterey. And people love to go there because it's gorgeous. It's sand dunes and sage, and then you're looking out on the Pacific Ocean. So it's like, man, if you're going to go to a military base, you want to go to Fort Ord.
It's the place that you pass and you say, if I was ever going to go to the military, this is where I'd want to be. Everybody says the exact same thing when they
it's the 4 seasons until you see this, and this is what it looks like now. So it's just, oh man, this story is so awful. So it was used as a training base for World War I and II, and the Korea and the Vietnam War. And like all military bases, there's a lot of cleanup that goes on. There are burn pits, and there is degreasing of the fuselages of planes, and there are all these chemicals that are involved. And so they were degreasing planes and, doing all the, the maintenance, the blah, blah, burning stuff, grenades and old ammunition and using all these solvents. And they were just washing them down leaky drains. They were putting them in leaky tanks and burying them in the ground. And the horrible thing also is that the military maintains to this day that there's nothing wrong with the water there. There's only one military base in North Carolina in Lejeune where they have, contaminated water, but every other base is fine. Right. Well, it's not, because it's absolute, BS. And there was this young woman, Julie Akey. She went there. Oh, what happened was in 1990, Fort Ord was designated as one of the most polluted sites in all of the US in 1990. In 1996, a 25-year-old linguistics expert goes to live there. She's going to be studying linguistics, nearby in Monterey. She's super happy. She's got a vegetable garden. She's watering it. She's doing what you do with your water. She's brushing her teeth. She's having showers in it. She's cooking her vegetables and her, her food in it. And when she was 46, she was serving in Colombia, and she was in incredible pain. It was her bones. It was awful. And at 46, she got diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And there's a Facebook group now of vets who served at Fort Ord, and 400 of them have cancer, and 200 of them are these blood cancers, multiple myeloma and things. So, and I've asked my oncologist about it. She won't say, yes, it's definitive, because, people obviously are very, careful when assigning blame. But it's, this is a lot of people with cancer, and
more than just the sample size. I mean, that's an alarming sample size. I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, they say that vets who've served at Fort Ord have 35% higher risk of getting multiple myeloma than the general population. So you just can't say, hey, there's not, a cause and effect here. There's not a correlation. You can't, I'm not going to say
it's not a coincidence. Like 4 cases is a coincidence. 1% higher, it might be a coincidence, but 35% higher rate of cancer is astounding.
Awful. Yeah, it's astounding. And there was one guy who's in his 70s now, and he worked there. He was, part of the team on the ground doing the sort of dirty work. And so they talk about the cohort that he was there with. There were 46 of them, and they were pilots and mechanics, and 13 of them are dead. A lot of them died in their 50s, and a lot of them had rare diseases and blood cancers. So, and then of course the military, the fact that they deny them healthcare, they're not giving them disability. I mean, this is just wrong. It's just, all these.
In a week that we're talking so much about healthcare and denials because of the murder of Brian Thompson, it brings us our attention to the U.S. military as well, and the denial that happens on every level when it comes to having to admit and then cover and then pay for and then mitigate the risks for those who are ill, and so it's across the board.
Yeah, totally criminal. So when I saw, that this ban had happened, and that, within the next 10 years, there will be no more dry cleaning outfits using, perks, because it's bad for the people who live around there, but it's really bad for the people who work there. And that's the thing. We have to protect our workers. And you're right. This is a real win in a week when we see what's happening with healthcare. And it's also interesting because we have an incoming president who's talking about, we're going to have the cleanest air and the cleanest water. Well, okay, mate, here are 2 chemicals that are being banned. You better make sure it happens, because that's how we're going to have clean air and water. Hello.
Get on it. Right. Yeah. And that's, so again, I love hearing good news. And I think that this is we bemoan the fact that it is like this and was like this, but just as more exciting than what is depressing is when it's acknowledged and it's addressed and there are results. And I think we don't give enough space in the world to that, because you talk about Ed Markey and people are skeptical of politicians. I've said this to Mark, why do you like politics so much? Because it's about what's possible. And it is possible to exact change through politics and through, people who, like that woman in Woburn, Massachusetts, who fought seemingly so hard on behalf of her son memory to make these changes, and then they get done, and it's kind of cool.
No, it is. And it shows you that it's possible, and that that one person joining with another person, Ann Anderson and Ed Markey, and then there's this person from the EPA who was a real champion on it too. So it's amazing. It's amazing. So that happened. So that was cool. And then I have a wildlife story as well, if you'd like to hear about that, which is
I'd love to hear a wildlife story. I mean, I have on my computer right now, and I know we're talking about birds, but there's a place called the International Bird Center, and they rescue seabirds and they rehabilitate them and let them out, and they have a webcam. So the webcam's always on, like the pelicans are always on my screen.
I love pelicans. I love them. They're super cool. Yeah, I'm a surfer, and it's really amazing because you're sitting in the lineup waiting for your wave, and this whole line of pelicans come skimming down. It's just like, it's so beautiful. So I'm gonna,
No, it must be. It must be so cool. I'm not a surfer. I grew up in New York City. We don't surf there.
Well, some people do if you're prepared to brave that water.
To us, actually, Belinda. So growing up in New York is when you would. Once you got past the age of being scared and trying to be cool, if you rode between the subway cars so that you're outside, you're not, you're allowed to be there, but you wouldn't want to be, and it's scary as hell. But that was what we called surfing. It was called subway surfing. We would do it, and you learned that, oh my God, Damon subway surfed. What? He subway surfed him, and that's what we would do.
Yeah, that's a whole nother level in comparison.
There's a lot of pelicans and not a lot of sky. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay, but still cool. Cool, Michael. Okay, so I'm going to talk about land birds. I'm going to talk about the California condor. So in 1987, the condor was basically extinct. There were 27 of them left in the world, and they're still critically endangered. We have a total of 561 in the world, and 344 are in what they call the wild free-flying population. So last week I was up in Pinnacles National Park here in California, and it is one of the locations where the condors that are now bred in captivity are released into the wild. Yeah, and I asked Albert to bring up this page because they're really wild-looking birds. They're our biggest land bird. Their wingspan can be 9 feet 8 inches, and they weigh 26 pounds, which is big for a bird. They're carrion feeders, so as you can see, they eat dead animals. They have no feathers on their head. That's for sanitary reasons. They start out with these gray heads when they're young, and then the older they get, the more yellowy and orange they get, and orange means that they're at breeding age. And they are really spectacular animals, and the fact that we've been able to, bring them back from the brink, they're still not, as I said, they're still critically endangered, because here's the thing, 554 birds, that's not a lot of birds.
Right.
And the thing, the 20th century was terrible to them. So there was habitat destruction, DDT, agricultural chemical got used, animals would, eat it. They would, the condors would eat them, and, there would be bioaccumulation because they're obviously eating a lot. That was killing them. There was poaching happening. But the biggest threat, and it's still their biggest threat, is lead poisoning. And the lead poisoning comes from bullets that are, full of little lead pellets. And when a bullet, which travels at 3 times the speed of sound, hits its mark, the animal that the hunter's trying to kill, that bullet is, I'm explaining stuff that people already know, but the bullet explodes and the little pellets of lead go right throughout the animal. So here comes the condor to eat it. And it's still killing 48% of the condors that die from lead poisoning. And
just from that, that's so unbelievable that there's that much lead poisoning I mean, that it could wipe out a species. It's just
I know. Look at it. Oh, Albert, you're doing so great with all the graphics. Thank you. That's really showing the story. Yeah, no, it's ghastly. It's really, really ghastly. And the other thing is, it's like, what we were talking about before, PERC and TCE, these horrible chemicals. There are safer alternatives. There are hunters who are part of wildlife conservation who specifically use bullets that do not have lead in them. Because, by the way, the lead that hunters use, if they're killing deer and people are eating venison, analysis is showing that, that deer meat, venison that is for human consumption, packaged and, on the stores, shelves, in stores, it can, even though they've tried to go in there and get the lead out, it can have lead in it too. So the awful thing is, by the time, I'm just talking about pinnacles, condors, but by the time most of them are 7, they've had to have this emergency chelation treatment to take the lead out of their blood because they can have it in levels as high as 800 micrograms per deciliter. And just to give you, and that would be fatal to a human being, 10 micrograms per deciliter is considered too much for a human child.
And you're saying it's 80 times that. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, 80 times in these birds. So if they don't, you saw they've all got their big tags on them. If they don't, and I there wasn't a ranger there. I would have interviewed a ranger, but it's low season. So they just had the information about the condors outside. But I'm like, wow, catching them, putting them under, dechelating their, taking the lead out of their blood.
One in the comments, just quickly, Dave said that lead shot is banned in California. Not sure about the rest of the country. Game wardens carry magnets to make sure the shot shells have steel shot and not lead, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is.
Go ahead.
Like I said, they were, let me be in contact with the park and find out, because when they're saying 48%, are they going over to Utah and Arizona, to visit the condors that are at Zion National Park or in the Grand Canyon?
So where are they just in these 3 states? Or are they beyond that? Or they?
So they're in Baja California. They're here in the coastal California mountains, and then they're in Utah and in Arizona. So Arizona, you find them. They re-release them in the Grand Canyon, and then they release them at Zion. And we had this day when we were hiking up into the pinnacles of Pinnacle National Park, which is a gorgeous and very visited national park if people want a spectacular location to go. And
if people want to see the condors, is it a guarantee, or is there a better time to go? Is there when do you go if you want to see the condors?
Well, it's funny because they had this area called Condor Viewing Platform, and they're supposed to come in at 3:00. They're out during the day, and they're very lazy. Apparently, they don't like to flap those great big wings. They just like to cruise around on the thermals. We did not see them at the viewing location, but we saw them when we were climbing up through the pinnacles. At one point, we had 4 of them thermaling above us. It was thrilling. I mean, absolutely thrilling. Because they've got this cool white feathers on their, their under side of their wings, and it's just magnificent. I mean, you can't tell when you're that far below them that it's 10 feet wingspan almost that you're looking up at, but it's still completely spectacular and beautiful.
So you were saying you were up there, and when you were up there, you saw 4 of them. You said
4 of them. So we were up there midweek, which is really lovely because there are less people. And then we just, we were in the right spot at the right time. And this viewing station where they come back into their nests, and that happens at 3:00 in the afternoon. Maybe if we'd waited longer, we were there at 3 and we were like, okay, condors, come on. Yeah. And because we'd already seen them up above, we didn't stay maybe as long as we could have at the viewing platform. And I don't think in any national park they guarantee you're going to see the animals,
No, of course not. But 3 p.m. you were there and you saw them, right? So
well, yeah. Early in the day we saw them up higher, and they have. I think there are 44 or 45 of them at Pinnacles. And the thing that's good about Pinnacles is it's not a huge national park, so it's smaller. But one thing also is they have turkey vultures, they have other birds, and turkey vultures look quite like condors. So you might be seeing a bird that you think is a condor, it might not be, but hey, you can still come home and say you saw a condor. In my book.
In that case, you lie. I mean, that's obvious. Like, if you go up there, you put in the time, you're up there.
You see a big bird, it's a condor.
I saw a condor today. Yeah. No
question. Exactly. That's how you do it. Yeah.
All right. Good. Melinda, it's just great to hear three good things. And I think on behalf of the show and everybody who watches it more than anything, we wish you a happy birthday, right?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
You had 2 birthdays and now you're only 3, which is great because you have, we'd all love to be 3 again, right? not as
maybe it feels good. It's a nice counterbalance to my actual weight, age.
Weight. Yeah, I'll take age. 3. Yeah, I would like to. That average is always good. I appreciate the time. This was really a pleasure. I am, in fact, envious of your jingle and your intro, but I don't hold that against you personally. And I just wanted you to know that I don't, because this was a lot of fun. So that's the planet, stupid. Right?
More.
It's the planet, stupid. No. It's the planet, stupid.
Next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Well, that was great. I mean,
yeah, isn't Belinda awesome?
Yeah, Belinda's fantastic, and Belinda, I'm sure, doesn't always have good news like that, because there are a lot of things.
Always brings good news.
Only good news.
Always. Well, no, not only. Sometimes she has to cover the tough stuff.
That's what I mean. So to have,
she always brings something good. Someone doing something good.
The dogs are excited about the condor, so that's telling me.
Absolutely.
We are through day 3 here. Want to remind people again, December 21st. The Mark Thompson Show Christmas meetup. Go to PayPal, donate $50. That will lock a spot for you. It's for the meetup, and RSVP at mtsmeetup@gmail.com. Tim, Albert, I promise everybody, Albert and I are going to do 47 more seconds of hockey tomorrow. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the Mark Thompson Show.
Bye, everybody. Oh, you got a sports question. We can cover it before you go.
Feel free to mention my UC Davis Aggie football team now going to the FCS quarterfinals this Saturday in Vermillion, South Dakota. How about that? I'm mentioning the Aggies. Go Aggies. Go Vermillion.
See you tomorrow, Michael Shore. Bye, everybody.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
All the time. Bye-bye.